Good evening, and welcome to the ancient world of Greek mythology. Tonight, as you settle into comfort, we begin a journey through stories that have echoed across millennia. Let these tales of gods and titans carry you gently toward peaceful dreams, starting at the very dawn of existence itself. In the beginning, there was nothing, and yet, this nothing was everything, a vast potential waiting to unfold. The Greeks called it chaos, and as you close your eyes tonight, let yourself sink into this primordial emptiness where all stories begin. Picture an endless void, darker than the deepest night, more silent than the space between stars. Here, in this infinite stillness, the first stirrings of existence began to take shape. Like ripples spreading across a cosmic pond, the earliest beings emerged from chaos. First came Gaia, the earth herself, solid and nurturing. Feel her presence as the ground beneath all things, the mother of mountains and valleys, of fertile plains and rocky shores. She spread herself across the void, creating the first boundary, the first definition of here and there. Above Gaia arose Uranus, the dome of heaven, vast and star scattered. Imagine him as a great arch of midnight blue, pin-pricked with the first celestial lights. He stretched himself over Gaia like a protective blanket, and in their embrace, the fundamental structure of the universe took form. As your breathing deepens and slows, sense the emergence of Tartarus far below, a chasm so deep that an anvil would fall for 9 days before striking its floor. This abyss would become the universe's prison, the place where defeated powers would one day be confined. And threading through all creation came Eros, the attractive force that binds atom to atom, heart to heart, drawing all things toward union. From the cosmic marriage of earth and sky came the Titans, the first generation of divine children. Picture them as forces of nature given form, mighty Oceanus, whose waters embrace the world, gentle Tethys, mother of rivers and springs, brilliant Hyperion, who would father the sun itself, luminous Theia, source of all that glimmers and gleams. Among these primordial beings, special attention fell upon the youngest, clever Cronus, whose name meant time itself. He alone possessed the cunning and ambition that would drive the next great chapter of creation. As you relax deeper into your pillow, listen to the secret that Gaia whispered to her youngest son. The Earth Mother was in pain. Uranus, fearful of being supplanted by his own children, had imprisoned the youngest and strangest of their offspring. The one-eyed Cyclopes, master craftsmen of thunder and lightning, and the 100-handed ones, beings of terrifying strength, lay trapped within Gaia's body. She could feel them stirring in her depths, and their confinement had become her torment. In your mind's eye, watch as Gaia fashioned a sickle from the hardest substance in existence, adamantine, which could cut through anything, even the fabric of reality itself. She presented this fearsome tool to her Titan children, asking who among them would free her from Uranus's oppressive embrace. The older Titans, despite their power, shrank from such a deed. But Cronus, ambitious and unafraid, grasped the sickle with eager hands. I will do what must be done, he declared, and Gaia's heart swelled with both relief and foreboding. That evening, as darkness painted the world in shades of shadow and starlight, Uranus descended to embrace Gaia as he did each night. Hidden in the folds of Earth herself, Cronus waited. Then, in a moment that would forever divide the history of the cosmos into before and after, he struck. The sickle flashed in the darkness. Uranus's power was severed and cast into the wine-dark sea, where the immortal blood touched the waves, foam gathered and swirled. From this mystical mixture arose Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, a reminder that even from violence and separation, something wonderful can be born. With this act, the reign of the Titans began. Cronus took his place as the new ruler of the cosmos, choosing his sister Rhea as his queen. Together, they presided over what mortals would later call the Golden Age. Imagine a time when the earth gave freely of her bounty, when flowers bloomed eternally and streams ran sweet with honey. Death was but a gentle sleep, and humanity lived in peace and plenty. Yet even in this paradise, shadows gathered. A prophecy whispered on the wind, carried by the fates themselves. As Cronus had overthrown his father, so would he be overthrown by his own child. Fear crept into the Titan's heart like frost in autumn, turning his wisdom to paranoia, his strength to cruelty. When Rhea brought forth their first child, Hestia of the hearth fire, Cronus looked upon the infant and saw not a daughter but a threat. In a moment of terrible decision, he opened his great maw and swallowed the baby whole. Rhea watched in horror as her child disappeared into her husband's darkness. Again and again this scene repeated. Demeter, who would bring the harvest, Hera, future queen of heaven, Hades, destined for the underworld, Poseidon, master of the seas, each child met the same fate, vanishing into their father's belly. Rhea's grief deepened with each loss, her heart breaking anew with every birth. As you drift closer to sleep's gentle shore, picture Rhea when she felt her sixth child quicken within her. This time, she resolved, would be different. When her time came, she slipped away in secret to the island of Crete. In a cave sacred to the old earth powers, guarded by the dancing Curetes, whose clashing shields and wild cries masked all other sounds, she gave birth to Zeus. The infant god's first cry echoed through the cavern like a promise of thunder to come. Rhea gazed upon him with fierce love and fiercer determination. She would not lose this child to Cronus's fear. Wrapping a stone in swaddling clothes, she returned to her husband and presented him with the bundle. Cronus, blind in his paranoia, swallowed the stone without hesitation, never suspecting the deception. On Crete, young Zeus thrived in hiding. The nymph daughters of the earth cared for him tenderly. Amalthea, the divine goat, nourished him with her magical milk. Eagles brought him ambrosia from Olympus itself. The bees of Mount Ida shared their golden honey. Every element of nature conspired to protect and strengthen the child who would reshape the cosmos. As sleep draws nearer, let yourself float with the image of young Zeus growing in power and wisdom. The cave that sheltered him became a place of wonder where the future king of gods learned the languages of wind and stone, of beast and bird. Destiny gathered around him like a cloak of stars, preparing him for the great contest to come. But that battle, the Titanomachy that would shake heaven and earth, belongs to another night's telling. For now, let the knowledge settle into your dreams that the universe moves in great cycles. Power rises and falls like the tides. Every ending contains the seed of a new beginning, and sometimes what seems like chaos is simply the universe preparing for its next great transformation. As the ancient Greeks knew, we are all part of this eternal story. The same forces that shaped the cosmos, creation and destruction, love and fear, order emerging from chaos, play out in our own lives, in our own dreams. Tonight, as you cross the threshold into sleep, you carry with you the beginning of all beginnings, the first chapter in the greatest story ever told. Rest now, cradled in mythology's embrace. Let the images of primordial gods and cosmic births fade gently into the landscape of your dreams. Tomorrow night, we will witness the war that changed everything, but for now, sleep peacefully, knowing that you are part of an ancient tradition. Listeners are gathered around the fire of imagination, finding wisdom and wonder in tales as old as time itself. May your dreams be filled with starlight and possibility, and may you wake refreshed, ready to face your own heroic journey through the day ahead. As you settle deeper into rest, picture the island of Crete, bathed in Mediterranean moonlight. Here, in a sacred cave on Mount Ida, young Zeus has reached maturity. The time has come for prophecy to unfold, for the son to face the father, for a new order to challenge the old. Zeus, now fully grown and magnificent in his divine power, sought counsel from Metis, the Titaness of wisdom and deep thought. Together, they devised a plan as intricate as the patterns of waves upon a shore. Metis prepared a special potion. Some say it was nectar mixed with mustard. Others claim it was wine infused with herbs that grow only where earth meets sky. Disguised as a cupbearer, Zeus approached his father's court on Mount Othrys. Picture the great hall of the Titans, pillars of marble reaching toward a ceiling painted with the first constellations. Cronus sat upon his throne, unaware that fate stood before him in servant's garb. With graceful deference, Zeus offered the cup to his father. As the potion touched Cronus's lips and slid down his throat, a great convulsion seized the Titan king. One by one, in reverse order of their swallowing, he disgorged his children. First came the stone, still wrapped in its swaddling clothes, then Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and finally Hestia, all fully grown, immortal, and ready for war. The reunion of the siblings was both joyous and terrible. As you breathe slowly and deeply, imagine the electricity in the air as these young gods beheld each other for the first time, their combined power making the very foundations of the cosmos tremble. Zeus stood before them as their natural leader, and together they declared war upon the Titans. Thus began the Titanomachy, a war that would rage for 10 cosmic years. Picture the earth itself as a battlefield, mountains crumbling like sand castles, seas boiling, forests igniting from the heat of divine combat. The Titans, led by mighty Cronus, commanded the heights of Mount Othrys. The younger gods established their stronghold upon Mount Olympus, its peak piercing the clouds like a spear aimed at the heavens. Each day brought fresh battles that shook creation to its core. Atlas, the strongest of the Titans, wrestled with Zeus among the clouds, their struggle creating the first thunderstorms. Hyperion, Lord of Light, clashed with Apollo, though some say Apollo came later. The mists of myth often blur such details in our drowsy minds. The earth groaned beneath their feet, and mortal creatures cowered in caves, witnessing a war beyond their comprehension. As you sink deeper into relaxation, hear the cosmic discord slowly shifting toward resolution. The war reached a stalemate, neither side able to claim decisive victory. It was Gaia, the Earth Mother herself, who provided the key to ending this divine deadlock. She whispered to Zeus of his uncles, imprisoned deep within her, the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones, locked away since the dawn of time by Uranus and kept prisoner by Cronus. In the velvet darkness before dawn, Zeus descended into the deepest caverns of the earth. There he found the Cyclopes, Brontes, Steropes, and Argus, master craftsmen whose single eyes blazed with creative fire. In gratitude for their freedom, they forged for Zeus his iconic thunderbolt, a weapon that could split mountains and shake the pillars of heaven. For Poseidon, they crafted the trident that would command the seas. To Hades, they gave the helm of invisibility, dark as the spaces between stars. Deeper still, Zeus found the 100-handed ones, Cottus, Briareus, and Gyges, beings so vast that each possessed 50 heads and 100 arms. Their strength was beyond measure, their loyalty absolute to whoever freed them from their ancient bonds. With these powerful allies, the tide of war turned like a great wheel of fortune. Picture the final battle, the 100-handed ones hurling mountains like pebbles, each of their countless arms launching boulders in an endless barrage. The Cyclops' lightning illuminated the battlefield in stark, violent flashes. Zeus wielded his thunderbolt with terrible precision, each strike echoing across eternity. The Titans fought with desperate courage, but they were overwhelmed. One by one they fell or fled. Some, like Oceanus and Tethys, had remained neutral and were spared. Others, like Prometheus and Epimetheus, had sided with Zeus and were rewarded, but Cronus and his staunchest supporters faced a bitter fate. As your eyelids grow heavy, envision the aftermath of this cosmic conflict. Zeus bound the defeated Titans in chains forged by Hephaestus. Though he too would come later, time flows strangely in myth's deep currents. They were cast into Tartarus, that abyss as far below Hades as heaven is above earth, guarded eternally by the 100-handed ones. Only Atlas received a different punishment, condemned to hold the heavens upon his shoulders for all time, his mighty frame becoming the axis upon which the cosmos turns. With victory secured, the Olympians divided the cosmos among themselves. In a scene of divine democracy, rare in ancient tales, the three brothers cast lots. Zeus drew the sky and became king of the gods, ruler of thunder and justice. Poseidon claimed the seas, becoming lord of waves, earthquakes, and horses. Hades received the underworld, governing the realm of the dead with quiet authority. The earth itself remained common ground, though Zeus's supremacy was acknowledged by all. As you drift closer to sleep's gentle kingdom, picture Mount Olympus as it appeared in its first glory. Palaces of cloud marble rose from its peaks, each god and goddess claiming their domain. Golden automata crafted by Hephaestus served ambrosia and nectar. The Horae, goddesses of the seasons, tended gardens where it was always spring. The Muses sang songs that would inspire mortal artists for millennia to come. Yet even in victory, the Olympians knew that power is never permanent. Zeus married Metis, the wisdom that had helped him triumph, but when prophecy foretold that she would bear a son greater than his father, Zeus followed the pattern of his predecessors. He swallowed Metis whole, absorbing her wisdom into himself. From this union within himself, Athena would later spring fully formed from Zeus's head, but that is a story for another peaceful night. The Great War was ended, the cosmos reordered under Olympian rule. Where Titans had governed through primal force, the Olympians would rule through law, marriage, and measured justice, though their own passions and conflicts would provide endless tales for mortal dreamers like yourself. As you hover on the edge of sleep, let the echoes of this ancient battle fade into the whisper of your own breathing. The Titanomachy has passed into legend, its thunderous conflicts softened by time into bedtime stories. The Olympians sit secure upon their thrones, unaware of the adventures, romances, and trials that await them in the ages to come. Rest now, cradled in the peace that follows every storm, even storms between gods. Tomorrow night, we shall meet each of the 12 Olympians in their glory, learning their powers, their personalities, and their place in the great tapestry of Greek myth. But for this moment, let your thoughts settle like dust after battle and drift into dreams as deep and timeless as Tartarus itself. May your sleep be guarded by the same 100-handed ones who watch over the Titans, and may your dreams be as pleasant as the eternal spring of Olympus. As twilight deepens around you, let us ascend the mist-shrouded slopes of Mount Olympus, home to the 12 great deities who shaped the destiny of ancient Greece. Picture yourself rising through layers of cloud, each step bringing you closer to the dwelling place of immortals, where the air itself shimmers with divine presence. At the summit, beyond mortal reach, stands the palace of the gods, its columns of cloud marble catching the eternal light of dawn and dusk simultaneously. Here, in halls that echo with divine laughter and celestial music, dwell the 12 Olympians. Let us meet each one as you settle deeper into peaceful rest. First among equals is Zeus, king of the gods, whose throne dominates the great hall. See him seated in majesty, his beard flowing like storm clouds, his eyes flashing with the brightness of lightning. In his right hand, he holds the thunderbolt, symbol of his authority over sky and storm. As god of justice and oaths, his word is law, though his own adherence to marital fidelity leaves much to be desired. The eagle is his sacred bird, and the oak his sacred tree, both testaments to his dominion over the heights. Beside him sits Hera, queen of the gods, goddess of marriage and women. Her beauty is regal rather than seductive, her presence commanding rather than alluring. The peacock is her symbol, its 100 eyes representing her watchfulness, particularly over her wayward husband's affairs. Though often portrayed as jealous and vengeful, she is also the protector of married women and the sanctity of the home. Her crown gleams with the authority of queenship, her scepter topped with a cuckoo, the form Zeus took when he first courted her. To Zeus's right stands Poseidon, lord of the seas, his blue-green robes flowing like waves. His trident, gift of the Cyclopes, can shake the earth or calm the waters at his will. Horses, both terrestrial and marine, answer to his call. His temperament is as changeable as the sea itself, now calm as a summer bay, now raging like a winter storm. In his underwater palace, sea nymphs attend him, while dolphins play in his courtyards of coral and pearl. In the shadows, we find Hades, though he rarely visits Olympus, preferring his underground realm. Dark-bearded and stern, he is not death itself, but its administrator, ensuring that the cosmic balance between upper and lower worlds remains intact. His helm of invisibility allows him to move unseen when he must venture above. Despite his grim dominion, he is perhaps the most faithful of the three brothers, content with his queen Persephone for half the year. Near the hearth burns the eternal flame tended by Hestia, eldest of the Olympians and goddess of the hearth and home. She is the quiet center around which all domestic life revolves. Having sworn eternal virginity, she tends the sacred fire that connects every Greek home to Olympus itself. Though she surrendered her place among the 12 to Dionysus, her presence remains essential to both mortal and divine realms. Golden Demeter sits apart, goddess of the harvest and the fertile earth. Grain stalks crown her flowing hair, and poppies bloom at her feet. Her mood governs the seasons. When she grieves for Persephone, winter grips the land. When her daughter returns, spring blossoms forth. She taught humanity the arts of agriculture, transforming nomads into settled peoples, wilderness into cultivation. Radiant Apollo approaches with his lyre, god of music, poetry, prophecy, and healing. His beauty is that of the sun at noon, brilliant, perfect, and somewhat distant. The laurel is sacred to him, remembering Daphne who chose transformation over his pursuit. At Delphi, his oracle speaks truths that shape kingdoms. His arrows can bring plague or healing. His music can soothe savage beasts or drive men to ecstasy. His twin sister Artemis roams the wild places, goddess of the hunt and the moon. With her silver bow and her pack of hunting dogs, she is both protector of wild animals and their hunter. Eternal virgin, she guards young girls until they reach womanhood, but woe to any man who spies upon her sacred groves. The deer is her companion, the cypress her tree, and the moon her nightly chariot. In the forge fire's glow stands Hephaestus, the smith god, divine craftsman of Olympus. Born lame, some say from Hera, alone in revenge for Zeus's solo creation of Athena, he was cast from Olympus, but returned to claim his place through skill rather than beauty. His automated servants, thus wrought of gold and silver, assist him in creating wonders. Zeus's thunderbolts, Achilles' armor, Pandora herself. Though married to Aphrodite, their union speaks more to the marriage of beauty and craft than to romantic harmony. And there is Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, born from sea foam where Uranus's blood touched the waves. Roses bloom in her footsteps, and doves flutter about her shoulders. Her girdle can make anyone fall in love. Her smile can launch 1,000 ships. Yet her domain encompasses not just romantic love, but the fundamental attractive force that binds the cosmos, the same power that existed as primordial Eros at the dawn of creation. Swift-footed Hermes darts between the realms, messenger of the gods, patron of thieves, merchants, and travelers. His winged sandals carry him faster than thought. His caduceus, a staff entwined with serpents, marks him as herald and psychopomp, guide of souls to the underworld. Inventor of the lyre, trickster from birth, he embodies the quicksilver nature of communication itself. Armored Ares paces restlessly, god of war in its most brutal aspect. Unlike Athena's strategic warfare, Ares revels in battle's chaos and bloodshed. His sons are Phobos, fear, and Deimos, terror. His lover is Aphrodite, for love and war have ever been intertwined. The vulture and the dogs are his creatures, reflecting war's aftermath. Even his fellow Olympians view him with distaste, save for Aphrodite, who sees passion where others see only violence. Wise Athena stands tall, gray eyed goddess of wisdom, warfare, and crafts. Born fully grown from Zeus's head after he swallowed her mother Metis, she combines her mother's wisdom with her father's power. The owl is her symbol, the olive tree her gift to Athens. Unlike Ares, she represents strategic warfare, defensive rather than aggressive. Patron of heroes, she guides with wisdom rather than passion. Finally, there is Dionysus, youngest of the Olympians, god of wine as ecstasy in theater. Born of Zeus and the mortal Semele, he died and was reborn, spending time in the underworld before ascending to Olympus. His worship involves liberation from social constraints, divine madness, and the transformative power of wine. The grapevine and ivy are his plants, the leopard and bull his animals. As you drift toward sleep, picture these 12 deities in their celestial home. They feast on ambrosia and nectar, their laughter echoing like distant thunder. They quarrel and reconcile, love and hate, scheme and support each other in an eternal dance of divine politics. Their stories interweave like golden threads in a cosmic tapestry, each deity both individual and part of the greater whole. The palace of Olympus gleams in eternal twilight, neither fully day nor night. The gods move through their halls like living constellations, each following their ordained path, yet capable of sudden, universe-shaking changes of direction. Mortal prayers rise like incense from the world below, and the gods choose which to answer, which to ignore, according to laws both cosmic and personal. As your breathing deepens and your thoughts quiet, remember that these 12 Olympians represent not just divine beings, but fundamental forces of nature and human experience. Love and war, wisdom and wine, hearth and hunt, all the great polarities of existence find expression in their eternal forms. Let the image of Olympus fade gently into your dreams like a mountain peak disappearing into evening mist. Tomorrow night, we shall explore the romantic and dramatic tales of these gods' interactions with mortals, stories of love, jealousy, transformation, and transcendence. But for now, rest peacefully under the watchful eyes of the Olympians, your sleep guarded by the same divine powers that have watched over dreamers since the dawn of Greek civilization. May Hypnos, god of sleep, though not counted among the 12, grant you peaceful slumber, and may his brother Morpheus send you dreams as beautiful as Aphrodite and as wise as Athena. As the evening deepens around you, let your mind wander into the realm where divine passion meets mortal desire. The gods of Olympus, for all their immortal power, were not immune to the arrows of Eros. Their loves and losses, its jealousies and betrayals, wove a tapestry of myths that still captivate us across the millennia. Begin with Zeus, whose wandering eye became legend. Despite his marriage to Hera, the king of gods pursued countless affairs with goddesses, nymphs, and mortal women. He approached each conquest with divine creativity, transforming himself into whatever form might win his desired's trust or slip past Hera's watchful gaze. Picture the story of Europa, a Phoenician princess of surpassing beauty. As she gathered flowers in a meadow by the sea, Zeus observed her and was immediately enchanted. Transforming himself into a magnificent white bull with horns like crescent moons, he mingled with her father's herds. Europa, drawn by the gentle creature's beauty, adorned his horns with flowers and eventually climbed upon his back. In that instant, the bull plunged into the sea, carrying the princess across the waves to Crete. There, Zeus revealed his true form, and Europa became the first queen of Crete, giving birth to King Minos and lending her name to an entire continent. Let your breathing slow as you envision Leda, Queen of Sparta, bathing in a secluded forest pool. A magnificent swan glided toward her, Zeus in yet another guise. From their union came two eggs. From one hatched the divine twins Castor and Pollux, and from the other emerged Helen, whose beauty would later launch 1,000 ships, and Clytemnestra, who would become Queen of Mycenae. In a tower of bronze, Danae was imprisoned by her father, King Acrisius of Argos, who feared a prophecy that his grandson would kill him. But no walls could bar Zeus, who descended upon Danae as a shower of golden rain. From this union came Perseus, the hero who would indeed fulfill the prophecy, though accidentally, with an errant discus throw. Poor Io, priestess of Hera, suffered greatly for catching Zeus's eye. When Hera nearly discovered them together, Zeus transformed Io into a beautiful white heifer. Suspicious Hera demanded the cow as a gift and set the 100-eyed giant Argus to guard her. Only after Hermes slew Argus could Io escape, though she wandered the earth in bovine form, tormented by a gadfly sent by Hera, until finally restored to human shape in Egypt. But Zeus was not the only Olympian whose heart could be moved. Apollo, despite his radiant beauty, often found his love unrequited or tragic. Consider Daphne, a nymph devoted to Artemis and the hunt. When Apollo, struck by Eros's golden arrow of love, pursued her relentlessly, Daphne fled in terror. Just as Apollo was about to catch her, she prayed to her father, the river god Peneus, who transformed her into a laurel tree. Apollo, grief-stricken, declared the laurel sacred to him, wearing its leaves as a crown and making it the symbol of poetry and prophecy. Even more tragic was Apollo's love for Cassandra of Troy. He granted her the gift of prophecy in exchange for her love, but when she rejected his advances, he could not revoke the gift. Divine gifts, once given, remain. Instead, he cursed her, so that while she would always speak truth, no one would ever believe her prophecies. She foresaw Troy's destruction, but could convince no one to heed her warnings. The mortal Hyacinth also captured Apollo's heart. As they played discus together, the jealous wind god Zephyrus blew Apollo's throw astray, striking Hyacinth dead. From the youth's spilled blood, Apollo created the hyacinth flower, its petals marked with the Greek letters AIAI, a cry of grief that echoes still in every spring bloom. Let your thoughts drift now to the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice, perhaps the most haunting love story in all mythology. Orpheus, son of Apollo and the muse Calliope, possessed musical talent so profound that wild beasts would lie down to listen, trees would uproot themselves to follow, and even stones would weep at his songs. He loved the nymph Eurydice with all his heart, and their wedding day should have been pure joy. But as Eurydice danced in celebration, she stepped upon a viper. Its bite sent her soul to the underworld, leaving Orpheus desolate. Unable to accept her loss, he took his lyre and descended to the realm of Hades, determined to win back his bride. His music moved even the cold hearts of the underworld. Cerberus laid down his 3 heads, the Furies wept for the first time, and the torments of the damned ceased. Hades and Persephone, moved by his devotion, agreed to release Eurydice on one condition. Orpheus must lead her back to the surface without looking back until both had emerged into the sunlight. Hand in hand, they climbed the dark path toward life. But just as Orpheus stepped into the light, doubt seized him. Was Eurydice truly behind him? He turned, catching one last glimpse of his beloved as she faded back into the shadows forever. His second loss was more bitter than the first, for now he had lost her through his own failing. Speaking of Hades and Persephone, their own love story began with abduction. As Persephone gathered flowers in a meadow, the earth suddenly opened and Hades emerged in his chariot, seizing her and carrying her to his underground kingdom. Demeter's grief at losing her daughter plunged the world into endless winter until Zeus intervened. But Persephone had eaten pomegranate seeds in the underworld, food of the dead, binding her to return for part of each year. Thus the seasons were born, spring and summer when Persephone walks the earth with her mother, autumn and winter when she returns to her husband below. Aphrodite herself, goddess of love, was trapped in a loveless marriage to Hephaestus, but found passion in the arms of Ares. When Hephaestus discovered their affair, he crafted an invisible net that trapped the lovers in bed, then invited all the gods to witness their shame. Yet Aphrodite felt no shame. Love, she demonstrated, follows its own laws. Mortal Psyche suffered greatly for the love of Eros himself. So beautiful was she that people worshipped her instead of Aphrodite, earning the goddess's wrath. Aphrodite sent her son Eros to make Psyche fall in love with something hideous, but Eros accidentally pricked himself with his own arrow and fell in love with her instead. He visited her only in darkness, warning her never to look upon him. Psyche's jealous sisters convinced her that her mysterious lover must be a monster. One night, she lit a lamp to see him and discovered the most beautiful of all the gods. But a drop of hot oil fell on his shoulder, waking him. Betrayed, Eros fled. Psyche then endured terrible trials set by Aphrodite, including a journey to the underworld itself, before the lovers were finally reunited and Psyche made immortal. Consider too the story of Echo and Narcissus. Echo, cursed by Hera to only repeat the last words she heard, punishment for distracting Hera with chatter while Zeus visited his lovers, fell deeply in love with beautiful Narcissus. But Narcissus, who spurned all admirers, rejected her cruelly. Echo faded away until only her voice remained. The gods punished Narcissus by making him fall in love with his own reflection in a pool. Unable to embrace his beloved image, he pined away and was transformed into the narcissus flower, forever gazing at its own reflection in the water. As your eyelids grow heavy, remember that these tales of divine love affairs gave birth to many great heroes: Heracles from Zeus and Alcmene, Perseus from Zeus and Danae, Helen from Zeus and Leda. The gods' passions shaped the mortal world, their offspring becoming the heroes and heroines of new myths. Even in their cruelties and betrayals, the gods showed themselves remarkably human. They loved unwisely, acted rashly, and suffered from their choices. Perhaps this is why their stories have endured. In their divine dramas, we recognize our own heart's follies and triumphs. As you drift toward dreams, let these ancient love stories remind you that passion has always moved both gods and mortals to great deeds and terrible mistakes. The heart wants what it wants, whether that heart beats in an immortal breast on Olympus or in a mortal chest here on earth. Tomorrow night we shall meet the great heroes born of these divine unions, Perseus and Theseus, whose courage and cleverness would make their divine parents proud. But for now, let Morpheus, son of sleep, wrap you in dreams as soft as Aphrodite's embrace and as deep as Orpheus's love. May your rest be peaceful, your dreams sweet, and may you wake refreshed to face whatever trials or triumphs tomorrow brings, secure in the knowledge that love, divine, mortal, or somewhere in between, remains the most powerful force in heaven and earth. As night deepens around you, let us follow the footsteps of two great heroes whose courage and cleverness illuminated the ancient world. These sons of gods and mortals bridge the realms of divine and human, their adventures teaching us that even those born to greatness must prove themselves worthy through trials and tribulations. Begin with Perseus, child of Zeus's golden reign and imprisoned Danae. As you learned last night, his grandfather Atreus, fearing the prophecy of his own death, cast mother and infant into the sea in a wooden chest. Picture them now, floating helplessly on wine-dark waves, protected only by Zeus's invisible hand, guiding their craft to the island of Seriphos. There, a kindly fisherman named Dictys drew the chest from his nets and raised Perseus as his own son. Years passed peacefully until Dictys's brother, King Polydectes, conceived a passion for Danae. To remove Perseus from his path, the king announced a wedding celebration where each guest must bring a horse as a gift. Poor Perseus, owning no horse, rashly promised to bring whatever the king desired instead. "Bring me the head of Medusa," Polydectes commanded, believing he sent the youth to certain death. Medusa, once a beautiful maiden, had been transformed by Athena into a gorgon so hideous that anyone who looked upon her face turned instantly to stone. Her hair writhed with venomous serpents, her eyes blazed with malevolent power, and her realm was surrounded by the petrified remains of previous heroes who had attempted this quest. But Perseus was not alone in his journey. Athena, ever the patron of heroes, appeared to him with guidance. She gave him her polished shield, mirror bright, explaining that he must never look directly at Medusa, but only at her reflection. Hermes contributed his winged sandals for swift travel and a curved sword sharp enough to slice through gorgon scales. The Graeae, three ancient sisters who shared one eye and one tooth between them, were compelled to reveal the location of the Hesperides, who provided Perseus with a magical bag to safely contain the severed head and Hades' helm of invisibility. As you breathe slowly and deeply, imagine Perseus approaching the Gorgon's lair. Using Athena's shield as a mirror, he crept backward toward the sleeping monsters. Medusa lay between her immortal sisters, the serpents of her hair hissing softly in slumber. With one swift stroke, Perseus severed her head, immediately thrusting it into the magical bag. From Medusa's blood sprang Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, the warrior with the golden sword, beauty and power born from horror. Flying homeward on Hermes' sandals, Perseus spotted a maiden chained to a rock by the sea. This was Andromeda, daughter of King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia of Ethiopia. Her mother's boast that Andromeda surpassed the Nereids in beauty had angered Poseidon, who sent a sea monster to ravage their coast. Only the sacrifice of Andromeda could appease the god's wrath. As the monster rose from the depths, Perseus unveiled Medusa's head, turning the creature to stone. Andromeda became his bride, and together they returned to Seriphos, where Perseus discovered that Polydectes had been forcing his mother into marriage. At the wedding feast, Perseus announced he had brought the promised gift. "Show us," the king demanded mockingly. Perseus obliged, turning Polydectes and his court to stone. He then gave the kingdom to kind Dictys and returned the magical items to their divine owners. Athena placed Medusa's head on her shield, the Aegis, where it would forever terrify her enemies. Years later, while competing in athletic games, Perseus threw a discus that was blown off course by the wind, striking and killing an elderly spectator, his grandfather Atreus, who had come to watch the games incognito. Thus the prophecy was fulfilled, teaching that fate cannot be outrun, only met with courage. Now let your mind drift to another great hero, Theseus of Athens, whose cleverness matched his strength. Though raised by his mother Aethra in southern Greece, Theseus was the son of King Aegeus of Athens, or perhaps of Poseidon himself, for the gods often cloud paternity in myth's misty realm. Before returning to Athens, Aegeus had hidden his sword and sandals beneath a massive boulder, telling Aethra that when their son could lift the stone and claim these tokens, he should journey to Athens to claim his birthright. At 16, Theseus easily lifted the boulder and chose to travel to Athens by the dangerous land route rather than safe sea passage, seeking to prove himself through trials. Along the road, he encountered and defeated 6 notorious villains, each meeting the same fate they had inflicted on travelers. Periphetes the club-bearer was killed with his own weapon. Sinis, who tied victims between bent pine trees, was torn apart by his own method. The Crommyonian sow, a monstrous beast terrorizing the countryside, fell to Theseus's sword. Sigiron, who forced travelers to wash his feet before kicking them off a cliff to a giant turtle, was himself kicked into the sea. Cercion the wrestler and Procrustes, who stretched or cut his guests to fit his bed, both met fitting ends. Arriving in Athens, Theseus found his father married to the sorceress Medea, who immediately recognized the young stranger as a threat to her own son's succession. She convinced Aegis to poison this dangerous newcomer at a banquet. But as Theseus drew his sword to cut his meat, Aegeus recognized his own weapon and dashed the poisoned cup from his son's lips. Medea fled in her dragon chariot, and Theseus was acknowledged as heir to Athens. Soon came Theseus's greatest challenge. Athens was bound by an ancient tribute to King Minos of Crete. Every 9 years, 7 youths and 7 maidens were sent to be devoured by the Minotaur, a monster with a bull's head and man's body, confined within the inescapable labyrinth designed by master craftsman Daedalus. Theseus volunteered as one of the sacrificial youths, promising his father he would return with white sails if successful, black sails if he perished. In Crete, Princess Ariadne, daughter of Minos, fell in love with Theseus at first sight. She consulted Daedalus, who gave her a ball of thread for Theseus to unwind as he entered the labyrinth, ensuring he could find his way back. Picture Theseus now, entering the dark, twisting passages of the labyrinth. The thread unspools behind him as he ventures deeper into the maze, where the bellowing of the Minotaur echoes off stone walls. In a central chamber, lit by flickering torchlight, he confronts the monster. Some say he used his sword, others that he beat the creature with his bare hands. What matters is that Theseus emerged victorious, following Ariadne's thread back to freedom. The Athenian youths escaped Crete with Ariadne, but their joy was short-lived. On the island of Naxos, Theseus abandoned Ariadne, some say at the command of Dionysus, who claimed her as his bride, others say through forgetfulness or faithlessness. In his grief or guilt, Theseus forgot to change his sails from black to white. His father Aegeus, watching from the cliffs of Athens, saw the black sails and threw himself into the sea in despair, giving the Aegean its name. Theseus became king of Athens, credited with unifying the scattered communities of Attica into a single state. He established democracy, founded festivals, and undertook many more adventures, including a journey to the Underworld with his friend Pirithous to abduct Persephone, a quest that ended in disaster, with Theseus trapped on the chair of forgetfulness until rescued by Heracles. As your eyelids grow heavy, consider how both Perseus and Theseus combined divine heritage with human determination. They faced monsters, not with brute strength alone, but with cleverness, help from the gods, and the support of mortals who believed in them. Their stories teach us that heroism requires not just courage, but wisdom, not just power, but compassion. Both heroes made mistakes. Perseus killed his grandfather, Theseus forgot his promise about the sails and abandoned Ariadne. Even heroes are human, their triumphs shadowed by failures, their glory tempered by tragedy. Perhaps this is why their stories endure. They show us that greatness lies not in perfection, but in facing our challenges with courage, accepting help when offered, and persevering despite our flaws. Tomorrow night we shall meet the greatest of all Greek heroes, Heracles, whose 12 labors would test the very limits of mortal endurance and divine favor. But for now, let the adventures of Perseus and Theseus fade into your dreams like ancient frescoes softening in moonlight. May your sleep be guarded by Athena's wisdom and guided by Ariadne's thread, leading you safely through the labyrinth of dreams until dawn's light calls you back to the waking world. As darkness settles around you like a soft blanket, let us turn to the mightiest of all Greek heroes, whose very name means glory of Hera, though the goddess herself would be his lifelong tormentor. This is the story of Heracles, known to the Romans as Hercules, whose strength was matched only by the magnitude of his trials. Born of Zeus's passion for the mortal woman Alcmene, Heracles entered the world accompanied by divine drama. Zeus, in his eagerness to father the greatest of heroes, had disguised himself as Alcmene's husband Amphitryon, while the real Amphitryon was away at war. To ensure his son would be born a king, Zeus declared that the next descendant of Perseus born would rule Mycenae. But Hera, ever vengeful toward her husband's paramours, delayed Heracles' birth through magic and hastened another's, ensuring that Eurystheus, weak in body and spirit, would wear the crown while mighty Heracles would serve. From his first breath, Heracles displayed supernatural strength. Hera, seeking to destroy the infant, sent 2 enormous serpents slithering into his cradle. Baby Heracles, awakening to the threat, grasped one snake in each tiny fist and strangled them both. His mortal brother Iphicles screamed in terror, while Heracles gurgled with innocent delight, playing with the dead serpents like toys. As he grew to manhood, Heracles learned from the finest teachers in Greece. Chiron the centaur taught him ethics and wisdom. Linus instructed him in music, though this ended tragically when the impatient student struck his teacher dead with a lyre, and Amphitryon trained him in chariot driving. His physical prowess was unmatched, but his temper remained as formidable as his strength. Heracles married Megara, princess of Thebes, and fathered several children. In these peaceful years, it seemed the hero might escape the divine conflicts that shadowed his birth. But Hera's hatred had not dimmed. She sent a fit of madness upon Heracles, and in his delirium he saw his own wife and children as enemy soldiers. When the madness cleared, Heracles found himself surrounded by the bodies of those he loved most, slain by his own hands. Horrified by his actions, Heracles sought purification at Delphi. The oracle instructed him to enter the service of his cousin Eurystheus and perform whatever 10 labors were commanded of him. Through these tasks, he would earn absolution for his terrible deed. These 10 would eventually become 12 when Eurystheus disqualified 2 of the labors. First, Eurystheus ordered Heracles to slay the Nemean lion, a beast whose hide could not be pierced by any weapon. Finding his arrows useless, Heracles wrestled the creature and strangled it with his bare hands. He used the lion's own claws to skin it, thereafter wearing its impenetrable pelt as armor. Next came the Lernaean Hydra, a many-headed serpent that grew 2 new heads for every one severed. With the help of his nephew Iolaus, who cauterized each wound with burning torches, Heracles defeated the monster. But Eurystheus declared this labor invalid, as Heracles had received assistance. The third labor took him to capture the Ceryneian hind, a deer sacred to Artemis with golden antlers and bronze hooves. For a full year he pursued this swift creature, finally capturing it unharmed. When an angry Artemis confronted him, Heracles explained his servitude to Eurystheus, and the goddess allowed him to complete his task. Fourth, he was sent to capture the Erymanthian boar alive. While tracking this fearsome beast through the deep snow of Mount Erymanthos, Heracles visited his old friend Pholus the centaur. The scent of wine attracted other centaurs, leading to a battle in which many died, including, tragically, both Pholus and the immortal Chiron, who begged for death to end his suffering from an incurable wound. The fifth labor seemed impossible: clean the Augean stables in a single day. King Augeas possessed vast herds of cattle, and their stables had not been cleaned in 30 years. Heracles diverted 2 rivers to wash through the stables, accomplishing in hours what would have taken years of conventional labor. Yet Eurystheus disqualified this labor too, claiming Heracles had cheated by using the rivers. Sixth came the Stymphalian birds, man-eating creatures with bronze beaks, metallic feathers they could shoot like arrows, and toxic dung. Using a rattle given by Athena to startle the birds into flight, Heracles shot them down with his arrows tipped in Hydra's blood. As your breathing deepens and slows, picture Heracles embarking on his 7th labor, capturing the Cretan bull. This magnificent beast, possibly the same one that had fathered the Minotaur, was terrorizing Crete. Heracles wrestled it into submission and brought it back to Eurystheus, who foolishly released it. The bull would later be recaptured by Theseus at Marathon. The 8th labor required him to steal the mares of Diomedes. These horses fed on human flesh, making them fierce and uncontrollable. Heracles fed their own master to them, which satisfied their bloodlust long enough for him to lead them back to Mycenae. There they were either released and later killed by wild beasts, or sacrificed to Hera. The myths vary in their endings, as drowsy storytellers sometimes do. For his 9th labor, Heracles was sent to obtain the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. The warrior queen, impressed by the hero's reputation, initially agreed to give him her belt freely. But Hera, disguised as an Amazon, spread rumors that Heracles planned to abduct their queen. In the ensuing battle, Hippolyta was killed, and Heracles barely escaped with the girdle. The 10th labor took him to the far west to steal the cattle of Geryon. This three-bodied giant guarded his red cattle with the help of a two-headed dog named Orthrus. Heracles killed both monsters and drove the cattle back to Greece, a journey filled with numerous adventures, including setting up the Pillars of Hercules at the Strait of Gibraltar. The 11th labor sent Heracles to fetch the golden apples of the Hesperides. These grew in a garden at the edge of the world, guarded by 100-headed dragon and the daughters of Atlas. Heracles convinced Atlas to retrieve the apples while he held up the sky, a burden Atlas was eager to relinquish. When Atlas returned with the apples but refused to take back the sky, Heracles tricked him by asking him to hold it briefly while he adjusted his cloak. Once Atlas resumed his burden, Heracles departed with the apples. For his 12th and final labor, Heracles was commanded to bring Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades, to the surface world. Descending to the underworld, he first sought permission from Hades and Persephone, who agreed on the condition that he subdue the beast using no weapons. Heracles wrestled Cerberus into submission and carried him to the terrified Eurystheus, who immediately ordered the creature returned. With his labors complete and his guilt expiated, Heracles was free. But his adventures were far from over. He joined the Argonauts in their quest for the Golden Fleece, fought against the gods and giants, and had many romantic encounters, including marriages to Deianira and Hebe. His death came through tragic misunderstanding. Deianira, believing her husband unfaithful, sent him a robe soaked in what she thought was a love potion, but was actually the poisoned blood of the centaur Nessus. The poison burned like acid, fusing the robe to Heracles' skin. In agony, the great hero built his own funeral pyre on Mount Ota. As the flames consumed his mortal body, Zeus took his immortal part to Olympus, where Heracles finally reconciled with Hera and married her daughter Hebe, becoming the god of strength and heroic endeavor. As you drift toward sleep, remember that Heracles' story teaches us that even the strongest among us must face trials that test not just our physical might, but our character, patience, and ability to endure suffering. His labors represent the struggles we all face, some external monsters, others internal demons. Yet through perseverance, even the most daunting tasks can be completed and redemption earned. Let the image of Heracles fade gently into your dreams, not as the invincible strongman, but as the flawed hero who earned his place among the gods through suffering, service, and ultimately transcendence. Tomorrow night, we will explore the tragic tale of the house of Atreus, where familial curses and bloody vengeance create a cycle of horror that would inspire playwrights for millennia. But for now, rest peacefully, knowing that like Heracles, we all have our labors to complete, and that with courage and persistence, even the mightiest challenges can be overcome. May your dreams be filled with the strength to face tomorrow's tasks and the wisdom to know that every trial, properly met, brings us closer to our own personal Olympus. Sleep well, cradled in the stories of heroes who remind us that greatness comes not from avoiding struggles, but from how we face them. As night deepens around you, prepare yourself for one of the darkest sagas in Greek mythology, the curse that plagued the house of Atreus, spawning generations of betrayal, murder, and vengeance. This tale reminds us that the Greeks believed no crime went unpunished, and that the sins of fathers could haunt their children for generations. Our story begins with Tantalus, a mortal son of Zeus, who enjoyed the rare privilege of dining with the gods on Mount Olympus. Blessed with divine favor and earthly prosperity, Tantalus should have been the most fortunate of men. But privilege bred arrogance, and arrogance led to an unspeakable crime. To test the omniscience of the gods, or perhaps to prove his own cleverness, Tantalus invited the Olympians to a feast at his earthly palace. For this banquet, he committed an act so horrifying that it would echo through generations. He killed his own son Pelops, butchered him, and served his flesh to the gods as the main course. The gods, of course, immediately recognized this abominable deception. Only Demeter, distracted by grief over her lost daughter Persephone, absent-mindedly ate a piece of Pelops's shoulder. Horrified by Tantalus's crime, Zeus restored Pelops to life, replacing his consumed shoulder with one made of ivory. As for Tantalus, his punishment was eternal. He was condemned to stand forever in a pool of water that receded whenever he tried to drink, beneath fruit trees whose branches lifted whenever he reached for food. From his torment comes our word tantalize. Pelops, marked by his ivory shoulder and his traumatic resurrection, eventually traveled to Elis in southern Greece. There he sought to marry Hippodamia, daughter of King Oenomaus. But winning her hand required defeating her father in a chariot race, a contest no suitor had survived, for Oenomaus owned divine horses given by his father Ares, and he killed each defeated suitor. Pelops, determined to succeed where others had failed, bribed the king's charioteer Myrtilus to replace the bronze linchpins in Oenomaus's chariot wheels with ones made of wax. During the race, the wax melted, the wheels flew off, and Oenomaus was dragged to his death. Pelops won his bride and the kingdom, but when Myrtilus claimed his promised reward, the first night with Hippodamia, Pelops hurled him from a cliff into the sea. As he fell, Myrtilus cursed Pelops and all his descendants. Thus began the cycle of violence that would plague the house of Atreus. Pelops and Hippodamia had two sons, Atreus and Thyestes, who inherited not only their father's kingdom, but also the curse that shadowed it. The brothers' rivalry began with a dispute over the throne of Mycenae, which an oracle declared should go to the possessor of a golden lamb. Atreus owned such a lamb, but his wife, secretly in love with Thyestes, gave it to her lover. When Atreus discovered this double betrayal, his vengeance was terrible beyond measure. Pretending reconciliation, he invited Thyestes to a feast. There, in a horrifying echo of their grandfather Tantalus's crime, Atreus served Thyestes a meal prepared from the flesh of Thyestes' own sons. After Thyestes had eaten, Atreus revealed the truth, showing him the heads and hands of his murdered children. Thyestes fled Mycenae in horror, later receiving an oracle that he could only avenge himself by fathering a child with his own daughter, Pelopia. From this incestuous union came Aegisthus, who would grow up to continue the cycle of vengeance. Thyestes raised Aegisthus to hate Atreus and his sons, ensuring the curse would pass to yet another generation. Atreus had two sons, Agamemnon and Menelaus, who would both play crucial roles in the Trojan War. Agamemnon became king of Mycenae and married Clytemnestra, daughter of the king of Sparta. Menelaus married her sister Helen, the same Helen whose abduction would spark the Trojan War. When the Greek fleet gathered to sail for Troy, adverse winds prevented their departure. The prophet Calchas revealed that Artemis demanded a sacrifice, Agamemnon's daughter, Iphigenia. Torn between his duty as commander and his love as a father, Agamemnon chose duty. He lured Iphigenia to Aulis under the pretense of marriage to Achilles, then sacrificed her on Artemis's altar. The winds changed, the fleet sailed, and Clytemnestra's heart turned to stone. During the 10 years of war at Troy, Clytemnestra took Aegisthus, Agamemnon's cousin and blood enemy, as her lover. Together they ruled Mycenae and plotted revenge. When news came of Troy's fall and Agamemnon's imminent return, they prepared their trap. Agamemnon returned in triumph, bringing with him Cassandra, daughter of Priam, as his war prize. Clytemnestra welcomed her husband with false warmth, spreading purple tapestries for him to walk upon, an honor reserved for gods. Despite Cassandra's prophecies of doom, which no one believed due to Apollo's curse, Agamemnon entered his palace. Clytemnestra had prepared a bath for her travel-weary husband. As he relaxed in the warm water, she threw a net over him. Some say it was woven without head or armholes, making escape impossible. While he struggled helplessly, she struck him 3 times with an axe. Aegisthus then helped her murder Cassandra and Agamemnon's followers. But the curse was not finished. Agamemnon and Clytemnestra had a son, Orestes, who had been sent away for his safety during his father's absence. Upon learning of his father's murder, Orestes faced an impossible dilemma. Divine law demanded that he avenge his father's death, but matricide, the murder of one's own mother, was the most heinous crime imaginable, certain to bring the Furies' wrath. Guided by Apollo's oracle, Orestes returned to Mycenae with his faithful friend Pylades. His sister Electra, who had been forced to live as little better than a slave in her own home, helped him plan their revenge. Together, they killed both Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, fulfilling the demands of justice, but incurring the wrath of the ancient Furies, primitive goddesses who punished those who shed kindred blood. The Furies pursued Orestes relentlessly, driving him to the edge of madness. He fled to Delphi, where Apollo offered him partial protection, then to Athens, where Athena established the first law court to try his case. The Furies demanded their traditional vengeance, while Apollo defended Orestes' actions as justified. Athena cast the deciding vote for acquittal, then persuaded the Furies to accept a new role as the Eumenides, the kindly ones, protectors of justice, rather than instruments of vengeance. This transformation marked the end of the blood feud and the establishment of law over vendetta. Yet even with Orestes' acquittal, the curse had one final act. Orestes' sister Electra married his friend Pylades, and they lived happily. Orestes himself eventually married Hermione, daughter of Menelaus and Helen, but his son Tisamenus, the last of the direct line, would fall to the Heraclidae, the descendants of Heracles, when they returned to claim the Peloponnese. As your eyes grow heavy, reflect on this dark saga of the house of Atreus. It serves as a cautionary tale about how violence begets violence, how the hunger for revenge can destroy families across generations, and how the establishment of law and justice finally broke the cycle of blood vengeance. The story of the Atreides reminds us that our actions cast long shadows, affecting not just ourselves, but our children and our children's children. It teaches that even justified vengeance can perpetuate cycles of violence that only wisdom, law and mercy can finally break. Tomorrow night, we shall turn to a different kind of epic, the Trojan War, where the curse of the house of Atreus would interweave with the fates of heroes and gods in the greatest conflict of the mythological age. But for now, let these tales of family tragedy fade into the realm of dreams, where even the darkest stories can be transformed by sleep's gentle magic. Rest peacefully, knowing that while curses may run in families, so too do love, wisdom, and the capacity for redemption. May your dreams be free from the shadows that haunted the house of Atreus, and may you wake refreshed, grateful for the bonds of family unmarred by ancient grudges or divine curses. Sleep well, and remember that every dawn brings the possibility of breaking old patterns and writing new stories. As the night deepens around you, let us turn to the greatest war in Greek mythology, a conflict that would last 10 years and involve not just mortals, but the gods themselves. The Trojan War was more than a battle between Greeks and Trojans. It was a cosmic drama where divine politics played out through human actions, where honor and pride led to unprecedented destruction. The seeds of war were sown at a wedding feast. When the sea goddess Thetis married the mortal Peleus, all the gods were invited, except Eris, the goddess of discord. Offended by this slight, Eris arrived uninvited and threw among the guests a golden apple inscribed with the words, "To the fairest." 3 goddesses immediately claimed it: Hera, queen of the gods; Athena, goddess of wisdom; and Aphrodite, goddess of love. Zeus, wise enough to avoid this impossible choice, appointed Paris, prince of Troy, as judge. Each goddess offered him a bribe. Hera promised power over Asia and Europe. Athena offered wisdom and victory in war. Aphrodite promised him the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite's gift, not knowing that the most beautiful woman, Helen of Sparta, was already married to King Menelaus. Paris had been raised as a shepherd, cast out from Troy as an infant because of a prophecy that he would cause the city's destruction. But fate drew him back to his birthplace, where he was recognized and welcomed by his father, King Priam, despite his sister Cassandra's warnings. Soon after, he sailed to Sparta as an honored guest of Menelaus. While Menelaus was called away to Crete for a funeral, Paris, with Aphrodite's help, seduced Helen and convinced her to flee with him to Troy. Some say she went willingly, enchanted by Aphrodite's power. Others claim she was abducted. What matters is that her departure shattered the peace between Greece and Troy. Menelaus called upon his brother, Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, and reminded all the Greek kings of their oath. Years before, when Helen's father feared her beauty would cause strife among her many suitors, the wise Odysseus had proposed that all suitors swear to defend the marriage rights of whoever won her hand. Now that oath bound the greatest heroes of Greece to wage war against Troy. The Greek fleet assembled at Aulis, 1,000 ships from all corners of Greece, but the winds refused to carry them eastward. The prophet Calchas revealed that Artemis, offended by Agamemnon, demanded the sacrifice of his daughter Iphigenia. With a heavy heart, Agamemnon lured his daughter to Aulis under the pretense of marriage to Achilles, then offered her upon the altar. The winds changed, and the fleet sailed for Troy. For 9 years, the Greeks besieged Troy, but could not breach its massive walls, built by Poseidon and Apollo themselves. The war settled into a grinding stalemate, with heroes winning glory in individual combat while the main conflict remained unresolved. The gods took sides. Hera, Athena, and Poseidon favored the Greeks, while Aphrodite, Apollo, and Ares supported Troy. Zeus tried to remain neutral, but often intervened on both sides. The 10th year brought the conflict to its crisis. It began with a plague in the Greek camp, sent by Apollo because Agamemnon had taken the daughter of Apollo's priest as a war prize. When forced to return her, Agamemnon demanded compensation by taking Briseis, a captive woman who had been awarded to Achilles, their greatest warrior. Achilles, furious at this dishonor, withdrew from battle with his Myrmidons. Without their greatest fighter, the Greeks suffered terrible losses. Hector, Troy's noble prince and greatest warrior, led the Trojans to the very ships of the Greeks. In desperation, Achilles' beloved friend Patroclus donned Achilles' armor and led the Myrmidons back into battle. He drove the Trojans back, but was killed by Hector with Apollo's aid. Consumed by grief and rage, Achilles returned to the fight. In a duel that shook the very walls of Troy, he killed Hector, and in his fury, dishonored the body by dragging it behind his chariot. Only when aged King Priam came alone to the Greek camp at night, kissing the hands that had killed his son and begging for Hector's body, did Achilles' anger finally break. He wept with the old king and returned Hector's body for proper funeral rites. Achilles himself would not survive the war. Paris, guided by Apollo, shot an arrow that struck Achilles in his only vulnerable spot. His heel, which his mother Thetis had held when she dipped him in the river Styx as an infant to make him invulnerable. The greatest of Greek heroes fell, and both sides knew the war must soon end. The final strategy came from the clever mind of Odysseus. The Greeks built an enormous wooden horse, hollow inside, and left it on the beach as an offering to Athena, while their fleet sailed away to hide behind a nearby island. One Greek, Sinon, remained behind to convince the Trojans that the Greeks had given up and left the horse as a gift to ensure safe passage home. Despite warnings from Cassandra and the priest Laocoon, who famously declared, "I fear Greeks even bearing gifts," before being killed by sea serpents sent by Poseidon, the Trojans dragged the horse into their city and celebrated their apparent victory. That night, Greek warriors emerged from the horse's belly and opened the gates for their comrades, who had silently returned under cover of darkness. Troy fell in flames and blood. The men were slaughtered, the women and children enslaved. King Priam was killed at the altar of Zeus by Neoptolemus, Achilles' son. Cassandra was dragged from Athena's temple and given to Agamemnon as a concubine. Helen was reunited with Menelaus, who, despite his earlier fury, could not bring himself to kill her when faced with her beauty. The gods were not pleased with the Greeks' conduct during Troy's fall. Their desecration of temples and altars brought divine wrath upon their homeward journeys. Athena and Poseidon, despite favoring the Greeks during the war, now conspired to make their return voyages perilous. Many would wander for years, some would never reach home. Among the few Trojans who escaped was Aeneas, son of Aphrodite, who carried his elderly father Anchises on his shoulders and led his young son by the hand out of the burning city. His subsequent journey would lead to the founding of Rome, but that belongs to another cycle of myths. As your eyes grow heavy, reflect on this epic war that began with divine vanity at a wedding feast and ended with the destruction of one of the ancient world's greatest cities. The Trojan War reminds us that even small actions, like throwing a golden apple among vain goddesses, can have consequences that reshape the world. It teaches us about the price of pride, the cost of honor, and the tragic waste of war. Heroes on both sides fought nobly and died bravely, yet in the end, a great civilization was destroyed, families were shattered, and even the victors found their triumphs turned to ashes by divine displeasure. Tomorrow night, we shall follow Odysseus on his long journey home, a voyage that would take 10 years and test him against monsters, witches, and the wrath of Poseidon himself. But for now, let the flames of Troy fade into the gentle darkness of sleep, and may your dreams be more peaceful than the nightmares that must have haunted the survivors of that terrible war. Rest well, and remember that while gods may play with human destinies, it is often human choices, like Paris choosing beauty over wisdom, that set great events in motion. May your own choices bring you safely home to those you love, with no need for wooden horses or divine intervention. Sleep peacefully, far from the battlefields of ancient Troy, where heroes found glory but rarely happiness. As you settle deeper into rest, join Odysseus on his epic journey home from Troy, a voyage that would take 10 years and test the limits of human endurance, cleverness, and loyalty. While other Greek heroes found their way home within months, Odysseus, king of Ithaca and favorite of Athena, was destined to wander across mysterious seas, facing monsters and magic before finally returning to his beloved wife and son. The troubles began immediately after leaving Troy. Odysseus and his 12 ships first landed among the Cecones, where his men, drunk on victory, ignored his orders to leave quickly. The Cecones counterattacked at dawn, killing many Greeks and setting the tone for the disasters to come. A storm sent by Zeus then drove them off course for 9 days. They next reached the land of the Lotus Eaters, where some crew members ate the narcotic lotus fruit and forgot all desire to return home. Odysseus had to drag them back to the ships by force, binding them beneath the rowing benches until the lotus's effects wore off. This strange episode reminds us how easily we can lose our way when we forget our true purpose. Their most famous adventure came next, on the island of the Cyclopes. These one-eyed giants lived without laws or agriculture, each family isolated in mountain caves. Odysseus, ever curious, led 12 men to explore a vast cave filled with cheese and livestock. This was the home of Polyphemus, son of Poseidon, who returned with his flock and trapped the Greeks inside by rolling an enormous boulder across the entrance. The Cyclops devoured 2 men for dinner and 2 more for breakfast. Odysseus, introducing himself as nobody, offered Polyphemus strong wine he had brought from the ship. When the giant fell into drunken sleep, Odysseus and his men heated a sharpened olive stake in the fire and drove it into the Cyclops' single eye. Polyphemus' screams brought other Cyclopes running, but when they asked who was hurting him, he bellowed, "Nobody is hurting me." Thinking him mad or afflicted by the gods, they departed. In the morning, the blinded giant rolled away the stone to let his sheep out to graze, feeling each animal's back to prevent the Greeks' escape. But clever Odysseus had tied his men beneath the sheep's bellies, and he himself clung to the underside of the largest ram. Once safely aboard ship, Odysseus couldn't resist revealing his true name, shouting, "Cyclops, if anyone asks who blinded you, say it was Odysseus of Ithaca." This prideful boast would cost him dearly, for Polyphemus prayed to his father Poseidon to curse Odysseus's journey home. The sea god heard and granted his son's wish, becoming Odysseus's divine enemy for the remainder of his voyage. Next came Iolus, keeper of the winds, who welcomed them hospitably on his floating island. He gave Odysseus a leather bag containing all the winds except the gentle west wind, which would blow them straight to Ithaca. For 9 days they sailed until Ithaca's shores were actually in sight. But while Odysseus slept, his curious crew opened the bag, thinking it contained treasure. The released winds created a tremendous storm that blew them all the way back to Iolus, who refused to help them again, believing them cursed by the gods. They rode on to the land of the Laestrygonians, giant cannibals who destroyed all but one of Odysseus's ships by hurling boulders from high cliffs. With his single remaining vessel, Odysseus reached the island of Aesaea, home to the enchantress Circe. She transformed half his crew into swine with a magic potion, but Odysseus, protected by a herb called moly given to him by Hermes, resisted her magic. He forced her to restore his men and became her lover, staying on her island for a full year until his crew reminded him of home. Circe told Odysseus he must journey to the underworld to consult the spirit of the prophet Tiresias about his route home. Following her instructions, Odysseus sailed to the edge of the world, where he performed the necessary rituals to summon the dead. There he spoke with Tiresias, who warned him not to harm the cattle of the sun, and met the shades of many dead heroes and his own mother, who had died of grief during his long absence. Returning to Circe's island, Odysseus received detailed instructions for the journey ahead. First, they would pass the island of the Sirens, whose irresistible songs lured sailors to their deaths. Odysseus plugged his crew's ears with beeswax, but curious to hear the Sirens' song himself, had his men tie him to the mast. The Sirens sang of knowledge and glory, and Odysseus struggled against his bonds, but his crew, unable to hear, rowed safely past. Next came the narrow strait between Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla was a six-headed monster who snatched sailors from passing ships, while Charybdis was a whirlpool that swallowed vessels whole. Following Circe's advice, Odysseus steered closer to Scylla, losing 6 men to her heads, but saving the ship from total destruction in Charybdis's vortex. They reached Thrinacia, island of Helios the sun god, where his sacred cattle grazed. Despite Tiresias's warning, Odysseus's starving crew slaughtered some cattle while he slept. Helios demanded vengeance, and Zeus sent a thunderbolt that shattered their ship, drowning all except Odysseus, who clung to the wreckage. Alone, Odysseus drifted back through the strait, barely escaping Charybdis, until he washed ashore on Ogygia, island of the nymph Calypso. She fell in love with him and kept him there for 7 years, offering immortality if he would stay as her husband. But Odysseus wept daily on the shore, longing for home, until Athena persuaded Zeus to order his release. Calypso helped him build a raft, but Poseidon, still wrathful, wrecked it with a storm. Odysseus swam for 2 days before reaching the island of the Phaeacians, where Princess Nausicaa found him and brought him to her parents' palace. The Phaeacians, moved by his story, gave him safe passage to Ithaca in one of their magical ships. Athena disguised Odysseus as a beggar so he could assess the situation at home. During his 20-year absence, over 100 suitors had invaded his palace, consuming his wealth and pressuring Penelope to remarry. His faithful wife had delayed them with a clever ruse, claiming she must finish weaving a burial shroud for Odysseus's father before choosing a new husband. Each night, she unraveled what she had woven by day until a maid betrayed her secret. Still disguised, Odysseus revealed himself first to his son Telemachus, then to his old swineherd and cowherd. Together they plotted against the suitors. Penelope, inspired by Athena, announced she would marry whoever could string Odysseus's great bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe handles, a feat only Odysseus had ever accomplished. All the suitors failed. Then the beggar, asked to try, strung the bow easily and shot through the axes. Throwing off his disguise, Odysseus, with Telemachus and the 2 faithful servants, slaughtered the suitors in a bloody battle within the hall. The disloyal maids who had consorted with the suitors were hanged. Penelope, cautious after so many years, tested Odysseus's identity by asking a servant to move their bed outside the bedroom. Odysseus protested that this was impossible. He had built the bed himself around a living olive tree, making it immovable. This secret convinced Penelope, and husband and wife were finally reunited. Yet even this wasn't the end. The families of the slain suitors sought revenge, but Athena intervened to make peace. An oracle had foretold that Odysseus must make one more journey, carrying an oar inland until he reached a place where people mistook it for a winnowing fan, there to make sacrifices to Poseidon. Only then would his wanderings truly end. As sleep approaches, reflect on Odysseus's long journey home. His adventures test not just physical courage, but mental resilience, loyalty, and the yearning for home that drives us through our darkest hours. Each obstacle represents challenges we all face: the lotus of forgetfulness, the sirens of distraction, the monsters of our fears, and the temptations that would keep us from our true path. Let the image of Ithaca that longed for home shimmer in your dreams like an island emerging from morning mist. Tomorrow night, we shall descend into the underworld itself, exploring Greek beliefs about death and the afterlife. But for now, rest peacefully, your own journey through the day complete, safely harbored in your bed as Odysseus was finally harbored in Penelope's arms. May your sleep be undisturbed by sirens or storms, and may you wake refreshed, ready for whatever Odyssey tomorrow brings, knowing that persistence and cleverness can overcome even divine obstacles on the journey home. Dream well and remember that sometimes the longest journey is the one that brings us back to where we started, seeing it anew with eyes made wise by experience. As the final night of our mythological journey embraces you, let us descend into the mysterious realm of Hades, the underworld of Greek mythology. Here, in the kingdom of shadows, we find not just a place of punishment, but a complex landscape reflecting Greek beliefs about death, justice, and the eternal fate of souls. The Greeks viewed death not as an ending, but as a transition to another form of existence. When mortals died, Thanatos, the god of peaceful death, or his more violent sisters, the Keres, would claim their souls. Hermes Psychopompos, in his role as guide of souls, would then lead the deceased on their final journey to the underworld. Picture now the geography of this shadow realm. To enter Hades' domain, souls must first cross the river Styx, the river of hatred that forms the boundary between the world of the living and the dead. Here waits Charon, the grim ferryman, his boat creaking with age beyond memory. Only those properly buried and with a coin placed under their tongue, payment for passage, may board his vessel. Those denied proper funeral rites must wander the shores for 100 years, before Charon will grant them passage. Beyond the Styx lie four more rivers, each embodying aspects of death and sorrow. The Acheron, river of woe, carries the grief of the departed. Cocytus, river of lamentation, echoes with the cries of those who mourn. Phlegethon flows with fire instead of water, representing the burning pain of loss. And Lethe, most mysterious of all, offers its waters of forgetfulness to souls preparing for reincarnation. At the gates of Hades proper stands Cerberus, the three-headed hound with serpents writhing along his back and a dragon's tail. This monstrous guardian permits all souls to enter but none to leave. Only a few heroes, Heracles, Orpheus, Aeneas, ever manage to pass Cerberus alive and return to the world above. Within the underworld, souls face judgment. Three judges, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, all famed for their justice in life, evaluate each soul's deeds. Minos, the chief judge, holds the deciding vote in difficult cases. Based on their judgment, souls are sent to one of several regions within Hades' vast domain. Most ordinary souls, neither exceptionally good nor evil, go to the Asphodel Meadows. This twilight realm resembles a vast misty plain where pale flowers called asphodels grow. Here, souls exist as shades, insubstantial shadows of their former selves, retaining their appearance but lacking the vitality of life. They drift aimlessly, experiencing neither joy nor sorrow unless given blood to drink, which temporarily restores their awareness and ability to speak. The wicked face punishment in Tartarus, a pit as far below Hades as heaven is above earth, surrounded by a bronze wall and the river Phlegethon. Here, cosmic justice is served with punishments that fit the crimes. Tantalus, who served his son to the gods, stands eternally hungry and thirsty, food and water always just beyond reach. Sisyphus, who twice cheated death, must forever roll a boulder up a hill, only to watch it roll back down. Ixion, who attempted to seduce Hera, spins on a fiery wheel. The Danaids, who murdered their husbands, must eternally fill leaking vessels with water. Tartarus also imprisons the Titans, defeated by Zeus, guarded by the 100-handed ones. The very worst sinners face the Furies, Alecto, Megaera, and Tisiphone, ancient goddesses of vengeance, who torment those guilty of the most heinous crimes, especially those against family. In blessed contrast stands Elysium, also called the Elysian Fields, or the Islands of the Blessed. This paradise rewards heroes and those chosen by the gods. Here, eternal spring reigns, and inhabitants enjoy perfect happiness, feasting, music, and athletic contests. Some accounts place Elysium within Hades. Others describe it as islands in the Western Ocean. The truly exceptional might be reborn 3 times and achieve Elysium each time, earning a place in the Isle of the Blessed, the most perfect paradise of all. The royal palace of Hades and Persephone rises in the heart of the underworld, built of dark marble and precious gems that need no sunlight to gleam. Hades, often misunderstood as evil, is actually a just ruler who maintains cosmic balance. His name means the unseen one, and he governs the mineral wealth beneath the earth as well as the dead. Beside him sits Persephone, who brings a touch of life to the realm of death during her annual 6-month residence. The Greeks told many tales of living heroes who journeyed to the underworld. Orpheus descended to retrieve his wife Eurydice, his music charming even the cold heart of Hades. Heracles came to capture Cerberus as one of his 12 labors. Theseus and Pirithous foolishly attempted to abduct Persephone, resulting in their imprisonment until Heracles rescued Theseus. Odysseus summoned the dead at the edge of the underworld to consult the prophet Tiresias. Aeneas, guided by the Sibyl, visited his father Anchises in Elysium to learn of Rome's destined glory. These stories of underworld journeys, called catabasis, served multiple purposes. They explored humanity's relationship with death, demonstrated the power of love and determination, and revealed divine knowledge about fate and the future. They also reinforced moral lessons about justice, showing that actions in life determined one's eternal fate. The Greeks had complex views about the possibility of return from death. While resurrection was rare, some souls might be reincarnated. The philosopher Pythagoras taught about metempsychosis, the transmigration of souls. Souls drinking from Lethe would forget their past lives and be reborn. The mystery religions, particularly the Eleusinian mysteries, sacred to Demeter and Persephone, promised initiates a better afterlife, suggesting that proper knowledge and ritual could improve one's fate after death. Dreams held special significance in Greek thought about the underworld. They believed two gates existed for dreams, one of horn, through which true dreams passed, and one of ivory, through which false dreams emerged. The god Morpheus, son of Hypnos, sleep, shaped dreams and could appear in mortal form within them. The Greeks often sought prophetic dreams by sleeping in sacred places, particularly temples of Asclepius, the healing god. As your own consciousness hovers between waking and sleep, consider how these ancient beliefs about death and afterlife reflect universal human concerns. The Greeks created a system that promised justice, with punishment for the wicked and reward for the virtuous. They acknowledged the mystery of death while offering hope through mystery religions and heroic examples of those who faced the underworld and returned. Their underworld was not simply a place of darkness, but a complete realm with its own geography, rulers, and laws. It represented both the finality of death and the continuity of existence in another form. The stories of those who journeyed there and back remind us that while death is inevitable, love, courage, and wisdom can transcend even this ultimate boundary. As our journey through Greek mythology comes to its close, let these ancient stories settle into your dreams like seeds in fertile soil. From the primordial chaos to the ordered cosmos, from the Titanomachy to the Trojan War, from the labors of Heracles to the wanderings of Odysseus, these myths have shown us gods and heroes who embody our highest aspirations and deepest fears. The underworld, our final destination, teaches perhaps the most profound lesson, that how we live determines how we are remembered, and that justice, though sometimes delayed, ultimately prevails. The Greeks believed that kleos, glory and renown, could grant a form of immortality, keeping one's name alive long after the body had crossed the Styx. Now, as Hypnos draws near with his gentle wings, let these mythic images fade into the soft darkness of sleep. May your dreams be guarded by the kindly ones, guided by Hermes through peaceful paths, and blessed by Morpheus with visions as inspiring as those that moved the ancient poets. Rest well, modern dreamer, cradled in stories that have comforted and inspired humanity for thousands of years. You have walked with gods, sailed with heroes, and glimpsed the mysteries of the afterlife. Tomorrow you return to your own heroic journey through life, carrying with you the wisdom of the ancients, the courage of heroes, and the knowledge that even the mightiest gods once struggled with the same fundamental questions that we face today. May your sleep be as peaceful as the Elysian fields, your dreams as rich as the tales of Olympus, and your awakening as fresh as the dawn that follows even the darkest night in the underworld. For now, let the river Lethos wash away the cares of the day, knowing that morning will restore you to the world of the living, renewed and ready for whatever adventures await. Good night and sweet dreams in the timeless realm of myth.